Before we begin, I want you to take a moment to check in with your body. How are you feeling right now? Do your eyelids feel heavy? Like every blink takes effort? Maybe there's tightness in your neck and shoulders, or your jaw hasn't fully unclenched in hours. Maybe your mind feels foggy. You start a sentence, then you lose your train of thought, and you forget what you were even doing. Or maybe you're feeling really easily distracted. You're scrolling, you're switching tabs, you're struggling to get started. Or maybe you are feeling a low level sadness or irritability, and it's making it feel harder to do anything. If any of this resonates, I'm right there with you. I'm going to be talking about what low energy feels like, and I just shared some examples of what it can feel like for me and my body. It might be slightly different for you, but if you are a student, undergrad, grad student, or professional, and you have a lot of deadlines and you've been struggling to stay on track, and you know that one of the big reasons is tied to your energy, then this episode is for you. We're going to be talking about how do you maintain progress on your goals when your energy is not just low, it's very low. And it's not just happening for a day or two, but it's happening in an ongoing chronic way. I'm going to share some small steps on what you can do about it, why it's even happening, and how to take action, communicate with others when this is happening, because I want us all to meet our goals, but I also want us all to be well. Welcome to the award-winning Grad School Femtoring Podcast, the place for first-gen BIPOCs to listen in on inclusive grad school stories and learn about personal development and productivity tips. This is Doctora Yvette Martinez-Vu, a certified coach, consultant, and author, and I will be serving as your Femtor, providing you with insider knowledge to help you reach your personal and professional goals. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. This is your host, Doctora Yvette. Today's episode is inspired by two things. First, one of my newer coaching clients asked me this question. And of course, I replied back. I sent her a video response and a resource tied to it. But then I thought I want to sit down and talk about it further, and I want to share it on my podcast, and I want this to be helpful for others because I suspect that a lot of us are tired. And even if you're not chronically fatigued, you're probably feeling tired right now, and this would still be helpful for you. The second thing that inspired it is my own feeling tired. I noticed it today. I noticed that I got on an informational interview call and I found myself masking more than usual. And after the call was over, I felt all the sensations. I felt my fatigue, just feeling tired. My eyes are heavy. I felt the tension. I felt my low mood. And I thought to myself, you know what? Today's my day that I have to work on my podcast anyway, so let's just tackle this topic. And it helps me personally to do this too because podcasting is restorative. It's energizing for me. So even in talking about something that I'm experiencing in this moment, I'm not just helping you all, I'm helping myself too. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's happening that's impacting our energy. When I think about our energy, especially when you're feeling low energy, it's about more than just being tired. There's multiple levels of exhaustion and fatigue. And I cannot assume that the way that I experience exhaustion is the same as how you experience exhaustion. there are forms of exhaustion that make it really hard to even function. And right now, I'm not talking about that. Right now, I'm talking about low energy, but you're still able to get some things done. And so I want to just recognize that it's a full body experience. And because it's a somatic experience, we all experience it differently. But in general, it's a physiological and emotional response. It's a response to a lot of different factors, from being in spaces that induce chronic stress to, for those of us that are systemically excluded, just feeling different forms of oppression or inequity, or even having circumstances that induce a lot of overwhelm. So there's a lot of, it's so multi-layered. There's so many things that are impacting our energy, even our environment. How often we have access to the news and what's going on globally. Even literally the chair that you sit on impacts your body. The bed that you sleep on impacts your energy. What you ingest, your nutrition, the food that you consume impacts your energy. Water consumption, all the things, the lights, the weather, transitions, seasonal transitions impact our energy. So we're about to go into daylight savings, and isn't that exhausting? There's so many things that are impacting our energy, and a lot of times we make it this internal thing like, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that, when really there's just so many things that are making it nearly impossible to be at an optimal level of energy. So I want to recognize that. I also want to recognize that when you're low energy, it also impacts your executive functioning. So when you're low energy, you may not be able to start tasks as easily. You may not be able to focus as easily. You may not be able to plan as easily. So that makes it harder to get work done. And then add your circumstances. So let's say you're a caregiver. That's very stressful. And it also means you're juggling multiple roles. Or maybe you're struggling with your finances, and that's incredibly stressful. Right now we're talking about all the individuals that are losing access to SNAP and how some folks will go hungry. How can you think straight? How can you have energy if you don't even have food on the table? I'm thinking about my folks who are spoonies, who have chronic illnesses. And actually, as I'm recording this, I have a light headache, but I've grown accustomed to working under my baseline symptoms, because my baseline still means that I have chronic illness symptoms. That's why every time I introduce myself, I mention that, because it is part of my day to day. It impacts me every single day. So that's going to impact your energy. And of course, I want to acknowledge that how we're feeling, even our different levels of low energy, can fluctuate at any time of day in any moment. So if you have been feeling bad because you're like, I can't get my work done and I'm so behind. And, sometimes folks internalize this idea that they're lazy, which I don't believe in laziness, just FYI. But really, your body is hinting at you that things need to change. You probably need to slow down. You probably need to unclench your jaw. You probably need to remind yourself to relax your shoulders or to take a deep breath. And then you can consider, again, what can I do in light of how I'm feeling right now? And just as a heads up, I'm not a therapist, but I am someone who has been working with a somatic therapist this year, and it has been transformative in terms of helping me to recognize sensations in my body and proactively work around those sensations. So I'm not just reacting anymore. I'm actually really tuning into my body and what works best for it. And even though I still have my baseline symptoms, I'm in a much better space in terms of managing them. And so just as a heads up, if you're someone who needs that additional support, I just want to shout that out, that somatic therapy may be a modality that could work for you. And in addition to doing some things on your own, if you can access that, I would highly recommend it. Okay, so let's talk about what can you do when you notice your energy is dipping and you still have to get some work done. Well, first, it's that recognition piece, recognition and acceptance piece. So instead of going straight to your to-do list at the beginning of the day or whenever you're starting your work session, start with your body. Start with checking in. How am I feeling right now? What am I feeling in my body right now? What kind of energy do I have today? How's my energy in terms of my emotional level? And how am I feeling physically? How am I feeling spiritually? And then you can move on to the next step. So once you're like, okay, this is how I'm feeling in terms of my energy. I'm feeling low energy, or I'm feeling somewhere in between low and mid, or actually I'm feeling pretty good. I have a bit of higher energy compared to most days. Then you can move forward with getting started. So now getting started on your work, I'm a big fan of rituals instead of routines. Because again, a lot of us make ourselves feel bad because of this. I don't know if you want to call it like if it's a myth or a bias or a fallacy, but we hold on to this idea that we must be consistent and that consistency means doing the exact same thing every day. But that's not realistic. So instead of holding on to rigid routines, if they don't work for you, think about, well, what rituals can I incorporate to allow some flexibility while still getting me in the zone of getting started on my workload. So, what is that ritual for you? I have my rituals to get started on my work. I have my rituals to end my day so that I know I'm done for the day and I'm not going to open up my computer after that. So, what are the rituals that work for you? Is it drinking a warm beverage before you get started? Is it lighting a candle before you start your writing? Is it stretching or doing 5 minutes of chair yoga before you get into it? Is it listening to your favorite music playlist that gets you in the zone of working? You name it. There's so many options. These are all the ones that come up for me off the top of my head, but only you get to decide what rituals are going to work for you to help you to transition from inaction to action. So help you to transition to starting to touch the thing, maintaining that momentum. Now, after that, it's helpful to then get into it. And I am a big fan of just touching something. So sometimes we are so low energy that a task can feel really big and overwhelming. So if something feels really hard to get started, what's the smallest, tiniest micro step you can take? Even if it's setting a 5-minute timer to get started or 2 minutes, like just whatever feels very, very tiny for you, getting started that way. And then honoring your energy. If after a short session, that's all you can do, then that's all you can do. Because some days it's just not happening. And some days, all you needed was just to get started to pick up that momentum and to keep going. I don't know what day that is for you, but it can, again, be helpful to go into a ritual to get started and then see how far you can take that and to have flexible goals. So one of the things that I do a lot is when I think about my tasks and my workload, I think about it in terms of energy levels. And so I think about low energy, mid energy, and high energy. And depending on how I'm feeling, I'll do a low, mid, or high energy version of it. So today, in terms of preparing for the podcast episode, I've been feeling more low energy. And so instead of going into like a full deep dive and let me prepare a million notes, I was like, let me just speak off the cuff. And yes, it's not going to sound as clean cut, as organized, but this is the energy that I have right now. So reassess when you're done with your work block to see, okay, how is this going? How am I feeling? Do I want to keep going? Do I need to rest? Because I don't want you to make it a habit of always overworking. And this comes up a lot, especially because if you're low energy, there's this feeling of not having enough time. And it's not just a feeling, it's actually a fact for a lot of folks is they literally don't have enough time to get everything done, but they try really hard to do it. And it's, again, going back to that acceptance piece. If you literally don't have enough time every week to get things done, then what is good enough? What is bare minimum? What's still going to help to move the needle forward? So you need that extra time to reflect. So that means recognizing I have very little time, but even in this little time, I need to be more aware and I need to be more intentional and strategic around what I do spend my time on. Are you feeling stuck in your academic or professional journey? Whether you're in the thick of grad school, preparing to apply, or navigating a career transition, you don't have to do this alone. I offer one-on-one coaching for first-gen BIPOC grad students and professionals who want compassionate structure, personalized support, tools and strategies, and tangible results. Together, we can co-create action plans that center your lived experience, your capacity, and your long-term goals. Whether you need help with time management, confidence building, motivation, or big picture career decisions, I've got you. Clients I've worked with have passed their qualifying exams, finished and defended their dissertations, mapped out career changes, and built sustainable systems. And most importantly, they've also felt seen and supported throughout the process. All of my coaching packages include access to a resource library, voice memo support, and guidance in between sessions so you're never on your own. If you're ready to invest in yourself, visit gradschoolfemtoring.com/coaching to learn more and book a free consultation. I'd love to support you in making aligned, confident moves in your academic and professional life. Now, I can't talk about this and not recognize the fact that sometimes your energy is so low that you fall really behind. You miss deadlines. You might have incompletes piling up. It's actually more common than you think. A lot of times we feel like, oh, it's just me. Everybody else is doing okay. But that's not true. Right now, so many of us are navigating so many things that you're definitely not alone. I get frustrated is witnessing folks who shame themselves, who guilt themselves, who feel constantly anxious and afraid of disappointing others. So then in your fear of disappointing others, you start to avoid things. So you start to avoid emails, you start to avoid meetings, you start to avoid people, and you don't get the help that you need. If this is you, I want to tell you that there's some other options besides going MIA when you are really behind on your workload. One is make sure you have your basic needs met. Because sometimes, folks are trying to get their work done and they are really, really struggling. So if you're really, really struggling, always basic needs first. Basic needs, your health, your well-being, your safety, having a roof over your head, food, whatever you need to do, get yourself to a point where those basic needs are met. If you need to go to a food bank, go to a food bank. If you need to ask someone for help, ask someone for help. If you need to get more rest, get more rest. Do what you need to do to get yourself feeling more stable. Then think about, well, what can I actually salvage? What can I actually get done and completed? And what of those things is actually essential? So if you're thinking about your program, it does sometimes get to the wire of what are the things that I actually need to get done so that I don't get pushed out of this program. That might mean reassessing, asking for that extra extension, reassessing, and thinking about again, what's the bare minimum version of this that I can get done to still submit it, get some credit, and move on. Also, it's important to communicate because in feeling our feelings, a lot of times we want to avoid these uncomfortable feelings. So we don't reach out to professors. We don't reach out to people who could help us. And so it's about being honest with them while only disclosing what you're comfortable with disclosing around saying that you're navigating health issues or you're dealing with capacity challenges or you're dealing with very difficult personal challenges at home. Whatever you need to say, let them know and see how they can support you. Sometimes that means asking for formal support. Do you need to get that documentation? Or if you have it, go and bring it to a disability services office to ask for formal accommodations. So many people I work with are neurodivergent or disabled, and they have a diagnosis and they are uncomfortable with the idea of going and requesting accommodations. They tell me that it feels like they're cheating the system. And what I hear is internalized ableism when I know that that could make a difference. Is it going to solve their problems? Not all their problems, but it'll certainly help. So if you need to ask for formal support, do that. Sometimes things get really, really hard where your health challenges are getting in the way. That low energy isn't just low energy. It's you're really, really struggling to the point where you might even need to access FMLA. You might need to take a leave of absence. And so I want you to explore all the options, not because I want you to get to that point. I definitely don't. That's what we want to avoid. But it's just so that you know that at any stage you have options. And then again, because you're low energy, it might feel like there's a lot of starting and stopping and starting and stopping, and you lose that momentum because you're doing work and then you don't feel good, or you have limited energy, then you pause it and then you have to get back to it. So what I'm hoping that you can do for yourself is to reduce that friction by finding the small things that you can do to maintain momentum. Micro steps make a difference. It doesn't feel like it in that moment. It doesn't feel like it for that day, but as it accumulates over time, it does make a difference. So starting with that 10-minute timer, that can make a difference. That might motivate you to reach out to a colleague to do some co-working. That's going to make a difference. Maybe you start to create your own reward system for yourself. One of my clients was telling me about their gold star system where they give themselves gold stars for the things that they do per day, and they give themselves stars that match with the effort that it took. So if it took a lot of effort, they give themselves 3 stars, less than 2 or 1. And I love that. Rewarding yourself can be a way to build momentum because it'll increase your motivation. So what do you do once you're at a better space? And how do you get to that point? One of the things that can be helpful is tracking your energy. So coming up with either an energy audit or an energy tracker or an energy map, basically just documenting the things. What drains me, what restores me, and do it over and over again until you have a long enough list that you start to notice your rhythms and your patterns. So then when you know what things drain you, you can then reassess when you're doing your work. How can I change this, modify this in a way where it's not draining me as much, or in a way that could potentially energize me? So again, for me, haven't been feeling good today, and I know that recording this episode, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not under ideal conditions, it's still going to make me feel better. Then aside from the energy tracking or energy mapping, you've got to do this like triage work. And this is really where you're prioritizing. So think about what absolutely has to get done. It's urgent or it's important. What are the things that can wait? We can pause them. What are the things that I could ask for help for or even delegate? And what are the things that we can let go of? And this is hard because the people pleaser in you is going to make it hard for you to say no to things. But if you have limited energy, you do have to have those boundaries. And this is hard for me. I mean, I get so many requests for informational interviews and coffee chats, and can you just share some of your time and give some advice? And I think I might actually record an episode where I answer my most common questions I get in informational interviews and just send it to folks and tell them, listen to it. And if you have follow-up questions, let me know and I'm happy to chat with you because it takes energy. And I don't actually have to say yes to every single thing and every single person as much as I wish I had the energy for that. So again, what do you have to do? What can you put on pause? What can you delegate? And what can you say no to? Then I want to come back to my idea of layered goal setting. And I can't remember if I have an episode about it, but if I do, I'll link it in the show notes. And this is an idea of really doing your goal setting in a way that you're thinking about your daily, your weekly, your monthly, and then your big picture annual goals. And then when you're looking at your tasks, think about, well, what are the things that are going to move the needle forward? And you can even do, as I do myself, where you're looking at your tasks and you break it down. Okay, what's the low energy version of this? What's the mid energy? What's the high energy version of this? And I do a lot of low energy work because when I don't have the energy, I'm not going to do the A plus work. And I've learned to accept that. And guess what? B's still get degrees. You don't have to be doing A plus work all the time. So when you're doing your layered goal setting, even your goal setting doesn't have to be A plus. You don't have to goal set according to ideal conditions. You want to goal set according to the energy you have now. I'm a big fan of doing work with others, doing work in community. I don't do it all the time, but I do it once a week or at least every other week where I'll co-work with someone. And it helps me, especially on the days I'm really struggling, to be there with someone else, to check in and to know that there's someone else on the other line who's going to ask me how it went. It helps to get some work done, especially the things I've been putting on pause or avoiding. And then here's the self-compassion piece. There's so much self-criticism that can creep up when you're feeling really low energy. I know because sometimes I wish I had more energy. I'll be resting and honoring my body's need for rest. And then I feel bad. I'm like, I could be doing this or I could be doing that, or I could be, showing up more in this or this way. But I remind myself, you know what? I'm doing the best that I can with the energy that I have. And I'm honoring my body's needs. And it is what it is, right? Like I am safe. I am okay. And I need to make sure that I rest so I can keep doing this long term. So those are my thoughts on what to do when you have very low energy. Overall, the reminder is that it is a challenge to make progress when you have very, very limited energy. But there are these strategies, these baby steps that you can take. My goal is always to move people from freeze mode to action. Or as someone recently told me, that a lot of the work that I do is about reducing friction and reducing harm. So my goal is for you to still feel like there's things that you can do to still keep making progress on your goals. Our goals are there for a reason. They're important to us, while also at the same time honoring your body, honoring its energy, recognizing all the different factors that are getting in the way of you having an ideal amount of energy. I don't think we sit down to reflect enough on all the things that we have going on in our lives. We're all dealing with so much. So I hope that you can give yourself some grace and start with some sort of baseline check-in. How am I feeling? How am I feeling in my body? Go into those rituals. What is something that I can do to help get me in the zone? And then get into it. See what you can do that's going to move the needle forward while still honoring your energy. And then reassess, communicate, ask for help. Turn down some things if they take up too much of your limited energy. And there you go. It's not perfect. I know this is not going to be like an overnight thing that that makes it so that, okay, you just do this thing and your problem is solved. No, this is iterative and this is long-term work. So that's the other piece about it, is that you've got to keep doing this over time for you to start to recognize what works for you. I hope that you can try one thing today, and then if it helps, let me know. I always love to hear from you all. Keep me posted. Leave me a comment, leave me a DM, leave me a review, whatever works for you. And I'm happy to get back to you. So I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, here are 3 ways you can support the show. The first is to make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The second way is to get your copy of my free resource kit linked in my show notes. This kit includes tools, worksheets, and podcast playlists on all things grad school, productivity, and personal development. The third way to support my show is to follow me on social media. You can find me on Instagram with the handle @Grad School Femtoring and on LinkedIn by searching my name. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.